This November, Kansas voters will decide if the Constitution should be amended to ensure sheriffs are elected. From Ellis County, Sheriff Scott Braun, and from Graham County, Sheriff Cole Presley stop by to share some of the details on this episode of the Post Podcast.
We believe that the sheriff, the head elected law enforcement official, should remain elected and should remain chosen by the people within the county. So by moving this from statute to the Constitution, it keeps the people's right to vote for who their sheriff is.
And this has come up, and it's not Sheriff Presley and myself. This is the Kansas Sheriff's Association that has put this forward. And we had a lot of conversations with legislatures who were able to get it put on the bill, and it was voted on. And they agreed with us to move forward and let it up to the people to vote on that on November the 8th. And so I know that Sheriff Presley and myself made several trips to Topeka to speak with legislators as well as be present during those votes. And it was educational for us, as well as very beneficial to have that one-on-one contact with them. And we want to thank those legislators for their support on the matter.
Sure.
So the sheriff's constitutional bill that we're asking for is what people aren't aware of is in the early 1900s, we were in the Constitution, in the Kansas Constitution, and we can't get clarity on that. We've actually tried several times to figure out why it was removed from the Constitution. Early 1900s, 1904, I think, was a date that was thrown out there. And the reason this is important to us is in the past, there have been some movements to do away with the elected position, such as sheriff within. One of the unique things about the sheriff is we are elected by the people, which allows us to follow the law. We answer to the people, to the public, where if you're an appointed position, you typically have such as a chief of police or a Riley County, they answer to either a board or to a specific, maybe a city manager or something like that, where sometimes that can affect the decision made, where every 4 years, our people within Ellis County and in Graham County, if they don't like you as the sheriff, they have an opportunity to vote you out of there. And this constitutional bill will ensure that there's always an unelected position, sheriff within your county. And I'll let Cole explain a little bit more on that.
Well, it's just a matter of just preserving people's rights to vote. It doesn't give us any more authority. It doesn't give us any more power. The statutes are still statutes, and what laws we enforce are still subject to the legislature. So we don't gain anything other than knowing we always have an office. And so it also doesn't put us in a position where we get to keep our job just by sake of being elected. If we're bad sheriffs, we deserve to be voted out. So it's not about like Scott had said, it's not about me and Scott and keeping our jobs. It's about preserving that office that we temporarily hold on behalf of the folks in our respective counties.
Interesting fact, out of all of the states, there's only 15, or there's only 15 that are not within the Constitution of all of our states. So it's not like we're going out and trying to create something new. It has been that way. So 15 states, which Kansas is one of them, where we're not in. The sheriff's office is not in the Constitution, which I was actually surprised by. I didn't realize that those numbers existed. But it's interesting that all the other states, the majority of the other states, feel it necessary to have a sheriff elected to ensure that office.
Sure. Now, the other states, just for my clarification and for the audience here, the structure of that system is state by state. So, like the sheriff's, the way it's done in Kansas is different in Colorado and Missouri and whatever, et cetera. Okay.
Yeah, and that varies from terms of office to what their authorities are to what their primary roles are. As an example, in the state of Maryland, I believe it's the state of Maryland, the sheriff doesn't have powers of arrest. He only operates the jail and is an officer of the court. And it falls to police departments and state police to carry out those functions. In other states, the sheriff is the end all be all, and there isn't any other authority that exists there. So it's different from one state to the next. But the one thing that's consistent in most of those states is the local voting populace has always had a say in who that leader is. That's the biggest connecting piece to all of them.
Sure. Now, also with this one, with the constitutional amendment, from my understanding, it would also preserve the right to recall. So if voters were really upset for some reason, they could recall the sheriff.
Yeah, and so one of the changes that is within this is going to be the ouster process a little bit. So currently, a county attorney or the attorney general, if there is belief that the sheriff is not doing their job or whatever the reason, there can be an ouster process that is done. As I said, the county attorney is one of those, as it currently is written. Because of, I know that this will be shocking, that sometimes sheriffs and county attorneys don't get along and they may not see eye to eye. There has been some county attorneys that have sought that to remove a sheriff, maybe not for the right reasons, maybe for the right reasons. But we believe that it may be better handled by the Attorney General's office, who is a non-biased party that reviews all of them, all the facts of the case on that particular sheriff. And then they could pursue the ouster process. So that ouster process still is in place, and it should be. If a sheriff is not doing, or any elected official, and they're not representing their people or taking care of their duties, they shouldn't be in office. And I'll be the first to tell you that. So that would be one of the changes. And that was a good question, James, because that's important that we keep that. That means to remove somebody from office if they're not doing their job.
Which needs to be preserved. It falls right in line with the whole concept of what we're doing and preserving the people's right to choose and empower their own leaders. And recall is a big part of that and a sacred part of that as far as we're concerned. It just needs to be done at the appropriate levels, and whether that be through recall or ouster that's above peer-to-peer. That's our position on that.
Yeah, I like that. Checks and balances. And in this case, it's the voters that are putting the check on it.
Absolutely. Law enforcement's given an immense amount of power, right? We're given the legislative authority to save lives, to take lives, to take away people's freedoms, at least temporarily, while they go through the court process. You're putting an awful lot of trust in who those folks are. Local voters need to have and retain the ability to choose who is empowered to act in that capacity. It's not that we're more important than any other elected office, but when you're giving someone that kind of power, you need to be able to retain the right to choose who does that.
I wonder if we want to talk a little bit about in Riley County as the example of doing it differently. What is the reasoning behind wanting to consolidate and do it like Riley County does, where they have one centralized law enforcement agency?
So some of the reasons that I have heard of, and Sheriff Presley may know more, one of them is believed to save money, typically, to combine manpower, to streamline processes, or the force is what I typically hear. I don't have any numbers in regards to that. The problem with that is you kind of lose that hierarchy. So if and I'm just going to use the city of Hayes, for example, the police department here. If they have an issue, a conflict within investigating a particular case, which does happen at times, then they can contact the sheriff's office, and the sheriff's office can investigate that. And then if the sheriff has one, then they go to the KBI. If the KBI has one, they may bring in the FBI, depending upon the case. And so these structures have been done in order to ensure that justice and the cases are being worked properly. Checks and balances, you said earlier, system. So that's one of the problems when you unite all of those that I see in doing that, when we don't have that balance of that checks and balance system. So
part of the original argument when they built that model was in the 1970s, in the 1960s and the 1970s, law enforcement training really didn't exist. And so there wasn't a lot of professional standards and certifications that needed to be attained to work in a law enforcement capacity. In fact, anyone who simply didn't have any criminal history could run and serve as sheriff if they were elected. And so part of their argument back then was that they wanted to build something that was more professional, more streamlined, and efficiency is a model that they argue today. our concern with that is it takes away the people's right to choose who those leaders are. That the director of the Riley County Police Department, who's an outstanding professional, by the way. I'm not trying to say he's not, but he answers to a bureaucratic board. They're people who are appointed. They're not elected. And so any member of the public who's upset with what's going on with local law enforcement has to work through their city council and county commission and then to this law board before they can ever reach the guy on the ground who has the capacity to change it. And that's one of the things that we don't like. As far as efficiency goes, if it works for Riley County, that's great. That's why they're accepted in the amendment. That's been that way for 40 years, and we didn't want to cause a problem there. So the amendment preserves the office of sheriff in 104, not 105 counties, just because it wasn't something we had the time to or desire to go work through. But if it was truly that much more efficient, why are they the only county in the last 40 years to adopt that model? That would be the question that I would ask. Again, it's not that they're not professional. They're a CALEA accredited organization, and they do outstanding work. But for the rest of Kansas, it doesn't seem to fit.
Well, and I would think that, especially looking at your county, Graham County, it's so rural. That's a different world than what goes on in eastern Kansas, really.
Oh, completely different. Night and day different. I'm famous for saying that in Graham County, we've got more cows than people. And I operate an office that only has, 10 folks between dispatchers and law enforcement officers because of the population. But what we deal with and how we deal with it is vastly different than what happens in Manhattan with K-State being on the ground, with all the federal government entities on the ground, with Fort Riley being right there. It's not the same environment at all. I think to a certain extent that's part of their draw for that model. But at the same time, we still believe voters should choose who that local law enforcement leader is, at least in the rest of the counties. So,
yeah, and our commissioners, and I will talk, I get phone calls from our commissioners in regards to complaints by the citizens, and our commissioners understand that who to refer that to, and they never overstep their bounds. Unfortunately, there may be other counties that it may occur, I don't know, but it's really great because they're aware of the process, our current commissioners, and they allow the sheriff who's elected just like them to do their job. And so it works out well within our community. I'm sure it works out well within Sheriff Presley's community also. We just don't have those conflicts with our commissioners, and we have an open dialogue, and I really appreciate that.
Let's talk the flip side. Why should people support this thing? If really realistically, I think like in my life, there's really not going to be much difference. You're going to be sheriff either way, I would assume, and it doesn't affect me. So why should people go out and vote one way or another, really, I guess?
If the right to choose your elected leadership is something that's important to you, whether your daily life is impacted or not, this is an amendment that needs to be supported. Most of us, most days, don't get up and worry about what it is our local government's doing. And I would argue the reason for that is we've taken the time to choose who we want there and put someone in place that we trust to conduct that business in a manner that says we don't have to worry about it. I pay my taxes, you do your job, leave me alone. That works great, especially out here in a rural area. But when that doesn't happen, when that trust is gone and that trust is eroded, if you no longer have the ability to make that change, just simply because the state legislature wanted to do something different, you're kind of screwed. I mean, as far as the ability to impact something there. So while your daily life will not change on any regular basis because of this amendment, what you've done is preserve your ability to keep things the way that they are from now going forward.
Excellent. I'm also curious, why has this come up now? This has been, so long. Riley County's been doing it for 40 years. Why is this a conversation that's coming up in 2022?
So this is kind of a funny thing. I mean, it's kind of sad at the same, but believe it or not, there are many sheriffs that thought we were in the Constitution, and until research was done on it, we only learned that we were not in the Constitution. It had been removed. So I don't know if that helps our case or hurts our case. But the point is at one time it had been in there. And basically, like I said, in roughly the early 1900s, it was removed. and that affects most of the Midwest. Is the ones that were removed. We're not really sure, but as Sheriff Presley said, it just allows you to make sure that you have the right elected person representing you and taking care of your community as the sheriff. It solidifies that. It doesn't mean that he or I will be that person. It will be someone, and it gives the people of Ellis County and Graham County and Rooks County and wherever else, it gives them a voice to make sure that they're electing that person that they want to protect their community.
There have been some moves in eastern Kansas counties to consider restructuring the office of sheriff. That has existed. And in large part, it's big counties like Johnson County, the most populous county in Kansas. They have what's called a Home Rule Charter Commission that allows them to restructure county government how they see fit instead of how the Kansas legislature built that. They have moved twice now to move the office of sheriff from an elected position to a position that answers to a county manager. And we just see that as weakening the sheriff's office. County government is not built to operate like a municipality. We're just not. Mm-hmm. And your elected leaders need that ability to make decisions and act decisively on a regular basis at any point in time without having to run something up the flagpole. It's just the way county government's structured. And so we believe seeing this momentum moving on the eastern side of the state to try to change how government is structured is an indicator to us that slowly that trickles west. As much as we might all not like what happens in Johnson County, eventually it touches all of us out here in western Kansas. And so at some point, without this amendment, that's going to change in eastern Kansas, and that will slowly trickle this way. And so if we can put a barrier in place now that keeps people's right to elect their sheriff in place, and then this is one less thing we have to worry about.
The interesting thing about the Johnson County was once they adopted that, they actually did remove 3 elected positions within there, and that was the county clerk, the county treasurer, and the register of deeds. They opted to keep the sheriff, but as Sheriff Presley said, it's probably a matter of time before that occurs and that they try to remove the sheriff from that. And then the people lose their voice. And so that's why we're here.
What did they do without the other positions?
They still have those positions.
Oh, they're just all appointed.
They're just not elected. I'm sorry. They're not elected any longer. And so, as he said earlier, that plays into exactly what he was saying in regards to a trend in regards to that. And I don't know that at least the western part of the state of Kansas, they want a voice. So Johnson County's got a lot of voices. I'm pretty sure there. There's a lot of people there. But they definitely, I think everyone in Ellis County and Graham and Rooks and Rush, they want a voice. They want to elect their sheriff. So,
okay. Well, guys, we're quickly running out of time here. I wonder if we want to talk a little bit about where people can find more information about this and the wording of the ballot and et cetera, kind of the things they need to know going into the November 6th election.
So if the ballot verbiage has come out yet, I guess I've not seen it, but they could check the Secretary of State's website, and as soon as that's released, it'll go. County clerks will have sample ballots posted probably pretty soon before the November election comes out. You can always go to the Kansas Sheriff's Association website, which is just simply www.kansassheriffs.org, and we'll have information posted as well there. Beyond that, reach out to your local sheriff because he knows what it is that's going on, and we've trained him up on what this amendment does.
And I will add that I am happy to come do some talks within Ellis County. I won't step into another sheriff's jurisdiction unless asked to explain what we're doing. I currently am going to speak at Rotary as well as Kiwanis, and I'm looking at some of the other ones. But my phone number for my office is 785-625-1040. I'll be more than happy to answer those questions that people may have. Or, as you know, I'm fairly approachable, I believe, on the street. So please feel free to ask me any questions. And if I don't have the answer, I will definitely get it for you. And I'm sure Sheriff Presley is the same.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Very good. Yes, keeps the elected position of sheriff. No, allows the government to change it.
Correct.
In short.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
You are correct. Once we get that actual, the way it's going to appear, we will definitely get that information out to the public. And we encourage everyone to vote and to vote any way you want. But we're asking for your support to secure your voice for your sheriff.